Welcome to Code Sandwich Hour, a certified fresh event where we're going to talk code and sandwiches, and it'll take about an hour. This week, I'm really excited to welcome to the stage our special guest, PJ Hagerty of Dev Relate. Thanks
Hey,
for being
Sean.
here, PJ.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, before we do anything else, first, most important question of the day: what is the best sandwich?
It's simple. It's straightforward. A toasted peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I worded this way to be
Okay.
basic, but so this is I'm not skilled at cooking many things, and you can argue whether toasting is cooking or not. But like you're using a device to make something hotter. Specifically, this device. This is what makes the difference in our house. The Hello Kitty
What is?
toaster.
Oh, it is.
So
It's a toaster.
it's a
Okay.
Hello Kitty toaster. You put your toast in. It doesn't toast like the middle part of it because that's where Hello Kitty's face appeared. So you toast it a little bit. It's lightly toasted. You put on the jelly. It warms it up a little bit, but keeps it cool. That's why the Hello Kitty toaster is key. And then the other side, you put the peanut butter. It gets all nice and warm and melty. Always creamy peanut butter. I'm a fan of strawberry jelly. I know not everybody likes strawberry jelly. I get the seedless Welch's or seedless Smucker's strawberry jelly. It makes for a like it's got the sweet, it's got the savory with the peanut butter. It's got the nice semi-soft, lightly toasted bread. And like it'll get you through your day. I managed to get through all of high school with peanut butter sandwiches, peanut butter jelly
So
sandwiches.
now, does this mean you're not going to go like you're not going to have the classic PB&J? It has to be toasted.
In a rush, I will go classic PBJ.
It's doable. Okay.
But if I have the time, if I have the whole 10 minutes that it takes to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I will make sure that I get the right bread. And I will recommend if it's going to be a non-toasted peanut butter and jelly, go with some like marble rye, seedless marble rye. Put peanut butter and jelly
Ooh,
on that, and
okay.
that's a good sandwich. That's for fancier days. But
That's the fancy PB&J.
yeah,
The
I just
seedless.
usually it's just whole grain. I'm from Buffalo, New York, so we go to Wegmans. We have Wegmans whole grain white bread. I don't know what that means. It looks like wheat bread, but doesn't taste like crap. So
Okay.
cook it on that. Put it in the toaster, very lightly toasted, just like so that it gets a little bit browner. Still see Hello Kitty a little bit in the middle. You're perfect. Put it on the peanut butter and
Oh,
jelly.
so is it actually like toasting Hello Kitty into the bread?
Yeah. You actually when you
Oh,
make the toast,
oh,
there's a picture of her face that comes up.
oh, that's amazing. So it's probably not toasting it super evenly then, I'm
No,
assuming.
definitely not. Definitely not. So when you want regular toast, the best way to do is like half toast it, pop it up yourself, turn it around, toast it again. You don't get to see
Yes.
Hello
Okay.
Kitty as
Okay.
brilliantly in the toast, but you get what you're looking for.
You get the okay.
It's
Okay.
also a great
Now,
toaster for. I feel like I'm really selling this toaster. It's a great toaster for bagels because like with bagels, like you have the hole anyway. So why waste all that heat? Have the heat focus on the actual bagel part.
oh, okay. I feel like you've figured something out with this toaster.
Yeah,
Like what?
accidentally because it belongs to my youngest kid.
But
But
what are you gonna do when either it breaks or Hello Kitty isn't cool in your house anymore? Are you just like
well,
what how do we toast things?
Hello Kitty will always be welcome in our home.
Okay, this is
Um,
good. Fair.
B, it's been going for 10 years. We've had this toaster for 10 years.
Oh, holy moly.
And it has never had a problem. And I hope that now that we're bringing it up and talking about it, there's not going to be a problem. But yeah, I guess there's other alternatives. Like I hope that there's a new version, like Hello Kitty 2.0 toaster. I would buy the Hello Kitty air fryer if they had one of those. I'd be into that. I
I
mean,
wonder how you'd get space on something if you're air frying though.
yeah, I
That
don't really
seems
know
like
how
that
that
would be
works.
challenging. Yeah.
Like little mini Hello Kitties on all of your chicken wings.
That would that's I don't there's something there.
There's
That could be
definitely
a
a
thing
business plan there somewhere.
somewhere. Yes. Okay, what about the peanut butter? Are you opinionated on the chunky versus
Oh,
smooth or
definitely,
creamy?
definitely, definitely. This was I almost didn't get married to my wife because of this issue. I
Oh,
am an advocate of creamy peanut butter. I believe creamy peanut butter is the answer. If I wanted to eat peanuts, I will get a handful of peanuts. I do not want that in my sandwich. I just want creamy peanut butter, something smooth. I mean, I don't want giant chunks of strawberry in my jelly either. Like I feel like that's weird unless it's like some like cool homemade thing that somebody did for whatever.
you want the
But
spread, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
no, creamy peanut butter when it kind of starts to break down under that toast and it warms up a little bit, it's like extra smooth and extra buttery, and it's just it's a beautiful
Yes,
thing.
yes,
Thank you, George
yes.
Washington Carver. You're the best.
I totally agree with you. Our whole family is all creamy. In fact, creamy peanut butter. In fact, my wife and kids. I don't eat a ton of peanut butter, but wife and kids like fly through this stuff. And there was one week, maybe a couple months ago, that my wife went to the grocery store, accidentally bought the crunchy peanut butter, and I'm telling you, usually one of those normal sized jars, it lasts about a week in our house. This thing was in our house for months because nobody wanted to touch. We're giving it to the little 1-year-old because nobody else wants to.
Because they don't know. They don't know.
They don't know. They don't care. Yeah.
1-year-olds don't have opinions until they do. But
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the way it is. It's odd because with my kids, it's a little bit different. Like my wife and I, we love peanut butter jelly sandwiches. My son, only peanut butter. My youngest, only jelly. And it's
okay.
toasted jelly sandwiches.
I mean, that's basically toast.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
it's-
that's really just toast and jam. But I mean, we don't tell them.
But
They
if you
don't
got
even know.
two, okay, I've agreed with the show to not be too opinionated on what is or isn't. This is a very sandwich inclusive
Right.
environment. Yes, yes.
Well, I was tempted to be like, what's my favorite sandwich? If I say hot dogs, does that create controversy right off the top?
Yeah. Well, I
yeah.
think that actually I think the like the Webster's dictionary says anything. All right, I'm not going to get it perfectly correct, but it's like filling in between two slices of bread or a split roll. And like, is
Yes.
a bun a split roll? Because it doesn't say bun. I don't know.
See, now there are certain parts of the world where a bun is specifically referred to as a split roll.
Oh, there we go. Maybe a hot dog counts, but we could spend a lot of time on
That's
this.
a whole show.
Yes, totally. Last thing I got to say before we transition into the rest of the show is I don't know if I had mentioned this on a previous episode or not, but I feel like it comes up regularly in my life, and I don't know why, but I didn't grow up on peanut butter and jelly. I grew up on peanut butter and mayonnaise, and not just mayonnaise, but Miracle Whip. This came from my grandma, and it was.
That is.
I won't go. I'm not even interested in trying this again, but ate it like every day as a kid. And then my sister, I have 3 siblings, and I'm the oldest. And the next 2 were like, "That's gross. Peanut butter and jelly is the way to go." But the youngest one was like, "No, oldest brother is cool. I'm going to eat this too." And then she's like, "But I have to disrupt it a little bit." And she would take a slice of Kraft American single American that like fake American cheese and put it on there.
Yeah.
I tried that once. It is disgusting.
That sounds horrible. Yeah, that sounds really bad. But I mean, sometimes family traditions. What are you going to do?
It's true. Yeah, and living in the Midwest, we just eat weird, gross, fatty things all the time. Yeah, it's what we do. All right, let's dig into the rest of the show. Take a step back here and introduce it. So before we move on, for all of you out in the audience and anyone listening in, just a quick recap of how this all works. The rest of the show is going to be a series of 3 segments. Each of them will have a name, a very bad, slightly different punny purpose, and a little bit of a different format each. The theme we're going to go with this week in honor of PJ is Buffalo, New York. These will be nice and punny and terrible. And we're being recorded live for those of you listening to the syndicated version. And so for those of you in the virtual audience today, if you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. I won't get to all of them, but we'll sneak a few in as I can. And for those of you listening to the syndicated version, just reminder that you can get these on YouTube. You can get them wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to look back on previous episodes, you can find the complete history at cfe.dev. Okay, and we are live now. It is Thursday. Just a reminder that we do this the first and third Thursday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern time in the US, which is 5 p.m. GMT. Okay, enough of the housekeeping. Let's get into our first segment, which today I'm calling Wings, of course, right?
Perfect.
So, here's why. You've been writing code, you've been building communities for a long time, so you had to get your wings somewhere. Okay, really bad. It might
It
get
works. It
worse.
works.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so PJ, tell me about the first line of code. You probably don't remember the specifics, but the first line of code you write, when was it? What do you think you were building? What language was it?
Oh,
I don't know,
I actually do remember the first line of code.
Oh, all right.
I wrote it on a Texas Instruments computer that hooked up to the back of a television set that my grandmother
Wow.
had gotten for opening a bank account. Like that's like they
That's
used to give. So
some sort of
they used to
perk.
give you toasters and blenders, and then he'd be like, "Oh, well, that's like a computer is an appliance. Here you go." So yeah, and she looked at it and said, "I have no idea what to do with this. PJ, why don't you take this to your house and figure it out?" Because like I was like that kid who knew how to set the time on the VCR. So obviously, a computer is what I needed. But it came with a book of BASIC. And obviously the first line of code I wrote was 10 go to 20. And which is just a simple beginning, like letting a basic program understand that it's about to start. After that, I got a little bit better at basic. Like it was basically you couldn't really do a whole lot with this computer. It required
Mm.
audio tapes to save a program. In those little old, you see them in movies sometimes, like the FBI is talking to somebody and they hit the little recorder box with
Yeah,
a
yeah.
regular magnetic tape in it, and like that's what you recorded your programs on. So
Oh,
it was
okay.
difficult. Like you had to write it, hit record, run it, let the tape pick it up, and hope that that whole system worked, which it may or may not. Like these are like pre-SCSI cables. It was a bad situation. There was no GitHub. There was no source control. It was all best of luck to you. But that's
Interesting.
kind of how I got started. And then it just kind of continued. I was a big math student when I was a kid. So back then, being in math meant that you were going to get introduced to computers fairly early. I at the high school that I went to, the Buffalo Academy of Science and Mathematics, no longer in existence, but pretty cool school. We had the first take-home laptop program.
Oh,
So
interesting.
these were Panasonic portable computers.
I mean, this is
Um,
probably early laptop days, right?
yeah, like the laptop was just becoming a thing, where it wasn't just a word processor. Like originally, they were kind of like overblown typewriters. They had one program, a word processing program on it. But we were able to bring them home. They weighed about 45 pounds ish,
Oh, God.
which I mean, in high school, I weighed about twice that. And you carry it on the bus, you just kind of, lean over, and we would write Turbo Pascal 5.5 programs,
Hmm.
which
So
was
what
not
like
so different from the basic, really.
yeah, what kinds of what would be the result of a program? What sort of thing would you build?
I mean, this was high school, so a lot of what we were writing in programs were like basic IO stuff, like how do I ask a person to
Okay.
log into a thing? And it's all command line based. How do I create something that has like a small desktop interface? How do I create something that has an icon? That was kind of what we were working on at the time, because I mean there was very little no OS. It was DOS. There was no, we weren't building, there was no web for the general people out in the world. We were putting things on disks and hoping for the best.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. And so this is pre going to college, and then you decided to study computer science in college, right?
Well, see, that's where things kind of took a turn, Sean. Got a little weird.
Okay. All right.
So
Let's
I
get
went to
weird then.
college when I was 17 to study anthropology. Because I mean, going to the Buffalo Academy of Science and Math, the computer stuff was great, but we had the first anthropology program, and I was super into physical and cultural anthropology. Just the whole concept of like archaeology was cool, but like anthropology, the whole evolution thing, really neat. But I was also a musician. So around the age of 18, I decided to not go to college anymore and be a full-time musician, which was great for a very good 3 years, like a really good solid 3 years there, where you can make money and play shows and do little tours, and you thought you
Mhm.
were awesome and lots of fun, and I wouldn't trade that in for the world. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life, and as we'll see when I talk about later in my career, like it really informed a lot of what I do now. But around the age of 21, 22, it was time to settle down a bit. The band broke up, things went south, and I was like, all right, well, I need to do something. So I started to get things back together. I went back to college, and I was like, all right, I still love anthropology, but I also know that I'm dating this lady. She's got a couple kids. We're going to get married, maybe have more kids. And anthropology does not pay the bills at all. Even with a PhD, you're still struggling to make ends meet with an anthropology degree. So computer science, I mean, I could get back into like, that's the money version of math. Get into that because I didn't care about like accounting or banking or investments, or I still don't care about any of that stuff. But like building puzzles, making things work was really like one of the best ways to get back into it. And I decided that programming was the way to go. So I started taking classes.
Interesting. Okay. So it wasn't like math is my thing 100% from the very beginning.
No, I mean, like math was my thing, but it was almost so much my thing that became secondary. Like it was like, oh, well, you're captain of the math team. Like, well, of course I am. Why wouldn't I be? I love math and I'm really good at it. I finished my college math before I was a junior in high school. Big whoop about math, everybody. But because that's also like kind of the group of people I was surrounded in. Like math wasn't considered so outlandish or difficult. It was just like, yeah, of course math is easy. Like we all know math is easy because it's easy to us. We have no exposure to any outside culture that thinks math is hard. When I first went to college when I was 17, when people were like, oh, we noticed you're not in the 100 level math classes. And I'm like, yeah, no, I've already finished my college math. I finished calculus and advanced calculus. Like we're done with that. And the people just being like, well, that's impossible. Math is really hard. Like, what about math is hard? Like, first of all, let me explain, because I was a cocky 17-year-old. So I was like, first of all, let me explain to you how you've only learned arithmetic thus far. Then we'll get into the fact that you haven't learned mathematics. Probably never took a physics course in your life, blah, 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 blah. I've since toned down. But
that's great.
Like, I mean, like it was an interesting time to have that gap and come back and realize that like mathematics had become computer science. Up to that side, like computer science, like that was some nerd stuff. Like that was really, 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 really amazingly nerdy people do. Not what mathematicians do. Mathematicians are focused on physics and other scientific endeavors or straight math. But they're like the combination of the two when I came back to going to school was really impressive. So like it was about problem solving. It wasn't about, clicking things together to make a machine do beep.
Yeah, totally. Something so about studying computer science, I think if you take your story and you move it, I think like a decade or two into the future, I think a lot of people would have that moment of, I need to settle down. I'm interested in computers, programs, and I'm not going to go back to school. I'm just going to learn it. And there are a lot of resources at our disposal to do that today. Was that not a thing you could do back when you were making that decision, or was there a reason that you chose to go to school?
I mean, the reason I chose to go to school is at the time, most of the programming jobs that I saw were like required bachelor's degree.
Right. Okay.
So I mean that, and like I realized in retrospect, like that was so dumb. Like I know so many people that have master's degrees in computer science that couldn't build a simple HTML website, but theoretically they know a lot about computers. It's like, that's great, but practicality is important too. I'm so jealous of people that get to go to boot camps or learn online. Like I'm so jealous of that because I would have loved that experience. The ability to kind of take it, run with it, do what I need to do. I didn't like the formal schooling experience. I was a wild stallion, Sean. A musician who was older coming onto a campus and being like, man, you can't tame me with this,
you do not want to sit in a classroom. Right.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. And if I have to write one more hello world, I'm going to hurt somebody. But like, it was the mechanic of the time. It's what you needed to get the job. And the idea was get the job. I'm glad I did it. I don't regret that I did it, but I also respect the fact that if I didn't have to do it, I probably wouldn't have. And I am jealous of people that get to go to like Turing or the 8 Academy who are able to like, do the power through course and learn a language and get out there and start actually doing the job.
Yeah. And I know it's a whole other thing to actually land the job after you do it, but there's so many tools at our disposal today.
Exactly.
So I do want to move on to the next segment, but before we do that, I want to fill in some space in the middle there. And I'm really curious to hear about your your shift from those early days into Ruby, particularly selfishly, because I started by building some WordPress sites, but my first job was in Ruby, and I wrote Rails for the first 5 years of my development career or so. So yeah, can you tell me about that kind of that shift in your?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was actually shortly after I graduated from college, got the degree, came out, got a job working support at a company, and it was like I was working support and being a member of the engineering team, and they were coding in Visual Fox Pro.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just bad. Like
I actually don't know anything about
it. I did. Probably I would say anybody who's going to be listening to this podcast under the age of 40 will not know what Visual Fox Pro is. Those who are above the age of 40, there's only like a 9% chance that they'll know what it is. But it was a bad Microsoft system. At the time, like Rails was kind of making a big thing, and Microsoft said, we're done with Visual Fox Pro. So how do we, what my head of engineering panicked. He'd only ever done this in his professional life. Visual Fox Pro, that's it. There was no other answer. That's how he solved problems. We'd built like 5 or 6 different applications with Visual Fox Pro. What do we do? So he looked into it and he realized that Postgres, the querying in Postgres is very similar to the querying in Fox Pro. Okay, good. So we can use Postgres for the database side of things. Awesome. What works well with Postgres? And at the time, like Rails was huge. It was like 2007, 2008. Rails is making a big splash. So he's like, all right, PJ, can you go home and learn Ruby on Rails in a weekend? And I said, no. I was like, I have kids, I have hockey practice, I have dance class, I have all kinds of things. I can't just go learn a language. So we hired a couple of people, one of which was like Wayne Seguin, who created RVM, and Kevin Baird, who wrote Ruby by Example, who just happened to be living in Buffalo. And they came and joined the team. I taught them the knowledge space of what we were building with our applications, academic software, not very exciting. And they taught me how to Rubyize the things that we were doing. And we actually had some like early kind of microservices architecture concepts in there. And it was a lot of fun. Moving from Fox Pro to Ruby was like a gift from heaven. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Ruby makes programmers happy. Yeah, because it does. That's not a snappy tagline. Like it's actually a great language to program things in. And Ruby community is a great community. They're probably one of my, this might get me in trouble, probably one of my favorite communities of all time that I've ever worked with. They're just fantastic, welcome, opening, caring, empathetic people.
I totally agree. I felt like, and at the time I started building Rails apps, which is it's probably like 2011, 2012 or so. And I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. And this is not really, or at least at that time, definitely not a big development community, but even within our smaller community, lots of folks writing Rails. And so it was like a lot of resources to get started. And yeah, I agree with you. I think I had a conversation the other day with someone where I said, I love the space we're in now with JavaScript and TypeScript and all the tools we have at our disposal, and everyone's a lot of folks are prioritizing developer experience. And it was, I just remember that shift from in the early Jamstack days from Ruby into this new decoupled pre-rendered architecture and way to build sites. And at first I missed writing Ruby so much. I was like, okay, now I'm writing JavaScript 100% of the time. And 5 years later, I totally love it. But it took a minute to get there because it was pretty sad to leave Ruby.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that I've talked to that say, it's not just the language itself, but part of it is the community and the support you get. Like with Ruby, you have a question, you ask it, it's answered. There's someone there, whether it's on Stack Overflow or in IRC. I think people are still using the Ruby IRC. Doesn't matter where it's happening. People are there to support what you're doing. They want to help you out. And that's the great. And I think, you mentioned being in Cincinnati. Like, I mean, that's the home of one of the greatest Rubyists of all time. My good friend, Jim Wyrick. And I think that's why he's part of the reason. Like, it's not just because
I think, yeah, you're right.
Great language, great people. That combination makes a community grow.
For sure. Yeah. And a lot of, especially as we're coming, transitioning out of the pandemic, like a lot in those days was just being with people in the same room as people, and all it can build a lot of influence that way.
Yeah. And we'll see if that comes back. I think right now we're still at like being in a room full of people is slightly awkward and somewhat off-putting.
Yes, but yeah, hope to see it come back. Anyways, let's transition, and I'm sure we'll touch back on a few of those things. But segment number 2 today, I'm calling Niagara Falls, and I'm doing this because as we accumulate more knowledge and more abilities, it can almost feel like a waterfall, both of let's call it information, but also opportunity. And what I've found progressing throughout my career is that I'm also kind of like I'm a yes man. I say yes to every. I'm like I want to do all of the things, but I think we often are kind of forced if we're going to achieve our goals, we have to focus, we have to narrow a little bit. Um, and so you've transitioned from those early days, and now you're doing a lot of community building, and you have founded DevRelate. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit about DevRelate. What is it, and what's the story? Where did it begin?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with what it is. And DevRelate it's a fairly simple concept. Developer and community relations as a service. So what software as a service is. You might know what developer relations, community relations is. It's kind of community management, dealing with the communities you want to be. So, let's say, you said you're working at a company that does Jamstack. You want to know what Jamstack events are important. You want to speak at the community, talk about the things that you're doing in the company, not necessarily the product. We don't do sales stuff, but we talk about the concepts around it. You want to build some content. You want to write blog posts. At certain size companies, they just don't have the ability to hire someone on full time to do that. Or they have some things they need to do. They need to, enhance their team for a while. So they come to DevRelate and we help them out with whatever they need. That could be coaching a CEO on how to talk about, Jamstack concepts when they really have only been focused on the product for so long, or, teaching, an engineer how to write better blog posts because they're so used to writing documentation. It's just kind of any of those services that get you to reach out to a community, give the community something. We help you make that connection.
So are you doing any like producing any content on behalf of companies, or are you
Oh
mostly
yeah.
doing more like coaching consulting?
We produce massive amounts of content.
Okay.
It's very rare that you'll see my or any of our writers' names on it. We do a lot of ghostwriting. And the reason for that is, same kind of concept. The people who are in charge of a company, especially a startup who's just starting out, they don't have the time. Like they have the idea
Mhm.
and they can maybe give you an outline. Sometimes it's a 5-minute conversation that says all you're going to get. You have to base 600, 800 words on that. But we produce a ton of content, be it we produce podcasts, which sometimes I host them or they provide a host and we just edit and filter them and help with guests. Sometimes we're doing, massive blog posts, writing white papers, doing case studies, rewriting documentation is something we do because sometimes engineers aren't great at that. It's kind of whatever you need, whatever kind of public facing thing you need, we can help you with.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. And I love that you said documentation at the end there, because so my title is I work at StackBit, and I'm the developer experience engineer, and we're a smaller team. We've got 22 folks, so we're still kind of new to like in the early days of our story. But when I was talking about coming on board, they technically had 2 job openings. One was DevRel, and one said developer experience. And when I think the founders had a very clear understanding of where that difference is. And then I talked to folks around the community. It's like everybody had a different opinion. And so we were talking about like, well, what do I like to do? How am I going to succeed in this role? Which one of these jobs is for me? And we ended up picking developer experience together, but it's like my job is kind of both of those things and all over
Yeah,
the place. So I was kind of curious, like, yeah, do you set boundaries of what you will and won't do, or is it's all fair game?
we try to set boundaries. Usually we try to let the clients, the people that we work with, set those boundaries, but sometimes coaching does come into play. There's a lot of people, for those people that are not familiar with DevRel, there's a book out there called The Business Value of Developer Relations by Mary Thengvall. And
But yeah, I've got that one. Mhm.
yeah, and if it comes down to it, a client doesn't seem to understand where the boundaries should be set in some way, I send them the book. I just buy it for them and send it right to them. Because you do need to understand that like DevRel is a huge umbrella term. Under that's developer advocacy, dev experience, user experience, community management, content, technical writing. Like there's so many different things that fall under that. And then, a lot of what they see is like the kind of like VC captured in a nutshell. Like if we're going to give you money, you have to have a dev rel. And it's like a dev rel. That's not actually a person like this. You can't nounify dev rel. It's developer relations. It's an activity. Under that name, a lot of things need to happen. And developer experience is one of the biggest things that I think people miss that a lot. They're like, no, maybe you should focus on how developers actually interact with your product.
For sure. Yeah. I was going to ask, because I feel like there's still a lot of ambiguity out in these various communities about, but like you had said, do I need it? And I think that book does a great job of like proving the point for it. Another topic is that I hear sometimes is like the product I'm building isn't for developers first. It's like developers are not my main user. So why should I have? Why do I need to care?
Yeah.
Develop? Yeah. How do you?
I've heard that. Yeah. I mean, like so one of the things that I actually did is I kind of pre-COVID was spending a lot of time in the talks that I was giving and the content that I was writing, talking about how every company realized they're a tech company. Every company has developers in it. Anything outside of the like mom and pop organization that's running a brick and mortar store on Main Street, everything beyond that, banks, hospitals, all of these things are tech companies. They need to realize that. If you have a tech company, you need developer relations. It may be that you don't need external facing developer relations. You might need internal facing developer relations. People that focus on, what skills do we need? What's going on in the community? And like, if anything, healthcare can benefit this from more than anyone else. They need to, kind of jump 10 years ahead because they are about 15 years behind everyone else as far as, they're so worried about security. They don't worry about anything else. And developers that are working on healthcare apps are having the worst time of things. The perfect example of like a huge community that's underserved by DevRel. And it's not that difficult. There are people who are experts out there who can definitely help out.
That makes a lot of sense. That's something I don't think a lot about is because I am in a working for a product that really cares about the developer experience, but that developer experience or developer relations might actually not be about developers using the product. It might be about your internal developers building your product. Like it can be a whole internal practice as well.
Yeah. There's a good friend of mine. His name's Davey. He worked at a company that did a car driving service, but not Uber. He worked there doing specifically develop internal developer relations. And his whole job was like to make sure teams were communicating with each other, to make sure that internal community was functioning the way the external community was, bringing up things like, hey, there's this new Python package that would really help us out with this X project. We should totally do that. And just being kind of like the person on the scene, understanding that that's like super important to manage that internal community as well. It's something, I think that a lot of companies miss is like if the larger you get, the larger you have an internal community that needs to be managed in some way.
That's really interesting. It's like you think about I think when we talk about DevRel as our like public community, we think, oh yeah, we're putting on public meetups and conferences and all that, and you're like, well, you could actually take all of that and put it internal in a big company. Like, we're still going to throw events and have meetups, but it's about our company.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you could do little lunch and learn things where different teams talk about their projects and talk about their hobbies. You could have, I know that I've had internal DevRel teams that manage like Freedom Fridays, where everyone gets to work on an open source project that isn't the job that you do, but gives back to the community. There's lots of internal activities that people can be doing that is really missed when you say, well, we don't have a product that focuses on developers, so we don't need DevRel. It's like, yo, you need DevRel. I'm here to tell you, you need DevRel like you need a Hello Kitty toaster. You don't know that you need it, but you need it.
Yes. Amazing. Yes. We've come full circle already. This is great. Okay. So speaking of giving back to the community, you're involved with an organization called Open Sourcing Mental Illness. Is that correct?
So we actually have just rebranded. We're now Open Sourcing Mental Health. It has a slightly more positive feel, but it's osmhhelp.org. So if you're looking that up, yeah. And our focus has been this stemmed from my engine yard days when I was working with the company Engine Yard. We had an organization called MH Prompt, Mental Health Prompt. And our job was to get speakers to conferences to specifically talk on issues of mental health, ranging everything from burnout to ADHD to bipolar disorder to eating disorders, all mental health issues that affect developers and discussed by real developers. And that was, eventually we realized that what MH Prompt was doing and what OSMI was doing at the time was we were gaining parity. So why not put the two things together? Which is what we did. So I became a board member there, and we continue to, make sure everybody can get on stage, everybody gets to where they need to be. And then we continue the conversation about mental health because we have a real stigma in this industry still. And this has been going on for nearly 10 years. We've been doing OSMH and Prompt and all of the mental health stuff. Next year, it will be the 10th year that all of that's been going on. And people still are like, well, I don't have mental health issues. It's like, do you? Maybe you do. Maybe you'd like to talk about that. And the main reason behind it is we have no problem saying like, oh, my laptop doesn't work or my keyboard's busted. But the most important tool we have in our arsenal is our brains. And no one wants to admit that maybe that doesn't work right.
Yeah. Or even like, do you talk often about like just taking a break and not just writing code 24/7?
Exactly. Yeah. Like take literal physical healthy behavior lends to your mental health. Like, things like, this was tough, especially during the pandemic. Get outside, walk a dog. Doesn't have to be your dog, but make sure you have permission first. Make sure you're showering, take care of yourself. Sitting in a dark, corner and coding all the time is not good for you. You have to have other things. Like, we were kind of talking before the show. You're like, you're not much of a comic book guy, but then we started talking about guitar amplifiers. Like, yeah, I mean, turn around and play guitar for 5 minutes. It doesn't matter if you know how or not. It does not matter if you know how or not. Do something else for 5 minutes, walk away, or you're going to burn out. And I said, it doesn't matter if you're a DevOps engineer, a developer, a systems administrator, a designer. This is true for everybody. I don't care if you're a product manager. Take a break, walk away, come back in 5-10 minutes and feel better.
Absolutely. And I feel like when we moved into the pandemic, we lost. I felt like mental health it was harder to maintain at first because we were hanging on to our old ways, but we also lost that camaraderie and like being next to people and all that. But at the same time, at least for me personally, that transitioned to realizing, hey, I actually, if I make my own boundaries, I'm in my own space, and nobody really cares if I leave play guitar for 5 minutes. Also, nobody's really going to miss me if I go take that hour-long walk to refresh, come back. And even if I work an hour less in the day, I'm probably doing more than I would have done because I had a time to think and process all of that.
Well, and that's I think part of it too is when we were in offices or even before the pandemic in general, people would just like check in and be like, hey, how are you doing? Hey, how are things going? Or they could see like, hey, Sean, you're looking a little tired. Why don't you take a break for like 10 minutes? And there was a reflective behavior. There was someone else to point that out to you. And for the first few months of the pandemic, there wasn't, because everyone was just like, oh my God, I don't even know what's happening. What should I do? How do I handle this? And that was a huge crisis. And luckily, health, folks in the US responded with, like, hey, there's video health appointments now, and you can speak with a therapist online, and we'll open that up to have that ability. But for those first few months, what a nightmare. A lot of people just didn't know what to do. And they did become like so enclosed and like, well, I shouldn't even leave. And I know like I was being extra. I wouldn't walk my dog except at night, because I knew no one else walks their dog in my neighborhood at night. And he's a small dog. He can just hang out in the backyard anyway. But it was like one of those things like, I don't want to run into people. How close is too close? What do I need a mask to be walking around my neighborhood? Like, it was just, there's so much unsurety that mental health went right in the bucket, in the bucket.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah. And I should mention, I know this isn't the pushing portion, but May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So definitely make sure that you're checking in. If you feel like you don't have an issue, that's cool. See a therapist just to try it out and see what it's like. If you have some extra cash laying around, donate it to causes like OSMH, because they can always use it. They're happy to use that money to get more resources out there. You can go to their website and get resources about, how to recognize some things in yourself, how to recognize some things in others. We also always recommend that someone in your organization should take mental health first aid. It's like $100 and it's a 1-day course, and they train you up on how to recognize things, not diagnose, not cure, just recognize so you can help people get help.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I just read this morning that it was Mental Health Month, and I was like, or Mental Health Awareness Month. This is great. This is great. Fitting for our show today.
Exactly.
So last question before we move on, and I might end up with a related question in our last segment, but just curious if there's something that really stands out for you with your involvement with OSMH in terms of like, do you have a favorite go-to story, or when you like really made an impact on someone? It's what like sticks and stays in your mind?
Yeah, I think to me there was a moment where we were at a conference called PHP Tech in Chicago, and I want to say this is back in 2015. But they wanted to make mental health very much a part of that conference. So we had 3 speakers there: Patty Foran, Greg Bogus, Ben Evans. I want to say his last name was the Magento guy. I don't remember his last name. Ben Marks, and myself as MC, and Ed Finkler. And each of them had 15 minutes to kind of do their little talk about mental health. And, Ben came up and he talked about how he has ADHD pretty severely, and it makes it very difficult for him to focus and so on and so forth. And, Ed talks about, his social anxiety and his OCD. And a lot of people there had known Ed for 15, 20 years in the PHP community and never knew he had these issues. Like they're always like, oh, Ed just gets tired. He doesn't want to go to the parties. It's like, no, Ed doesn't want to go to the parties because he's very uncomfortable going to the parties. And that's okay. We need to respect that. But Patty actually was the one, he walked us through a day in the life of what it's like to have severe depression. And it's not like, oh, I feel down. It's like, oh, I kind of want to die. Every 5 minutes, you're making a decision on whether to live or not. And he had everyone close his eyes and literally walked us through a day of what that was like. And it was the most difficult and powerful 15 minutes I've ever sat through at a tech conference in my life. And all 4 of those guys, absolutely amazing speakers, but just so great that they shared their stories. And that to me is like, that's the value that OSMH brings to the world.
Okay. That sounds, I even hear just talking about it. I'm like, oh, I can picture the impact that must've had on folks who attended.
I mean, the big feedback that we get is like, it's not just, like the tears that were flowing after Patty's story, or people, it's the prairie dog, so to speak. It's the people who I watch them like from, the side of the stage, and I'm looking and I'm watching, like, and they're sitting there, they're looking at their phones or computers, and somebody says something like when Greg Bogus talks about his issues with bipolar, and he says something and someone goes, whoop, wait a minute.
Yes.
Me, I do that. That's what makes the difference. We've had so many people that have come to tell us that the talks we've done have had an impact on their life. The presentations, we wrote a conference guide for KubeCon the last couple of years just on how to handle your mental health being at a conference. Because it's difficult for a lot of people to see that many people all in one place. And it's just, this is the world we live in. We need to take care of each other and make sure we're all doing okay.
I love that. Love that you're part of this organization, pushing this cause. Yeah, I think this is
it's a privilege.
Super
it's
important.
A privilege to be part of it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And with that, let's move on to our third and final segment. This one, ready for it?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Snow showers. Because
no, we can. Can I make a request? Blizzard.
Oh, yeah.
We'll call it the Blizzard.
Blizzard. Okay. Actually, this is better. Blizzard is better. Yep, I'm thinking about Blizzard's better because like a cold day in January or February or whenever it's snowing in Buffalo, it's like these questions, they're going to accumulate quickly.
There you go.
I think that might be my worst one.
I like it.
Okay, so I've got a handful of questions here. They should be fairly short questions, probably prompting fairly short answers, and they're all over the place. So feel free to pass on any of them. Ready?
Cool. All right, I'm ready.
Okay. Question number 1. How many times have you been to Niagara Falls?
Millions. Every field trip at least once a year through all of the 12 years of school, plus every time someone comes to town, probably I'd say at least 100, 150 times.
Wow. Okay. Now, are you opinionated on which side is the better
Canadian
side?
side is better. Canadian, there's no question.
It's hard to argue that,
There,
right?
there, there's value to both sides. U.S. side, you get very close. You can understand the power of the falls. Canadian side, you can see the full thing. It's the beauty of the falls.
Actually a great way to put it. Yes, totally agree. There's also, isn't there? It's been several years. Is there way more tourism on the Buffalo side? At least there was when I was there last time. Or is it now? It's probably both sides.
It's hard to say. Post pandemic, I'd have to say there's less tourism in general, but and also you can't just walk across the way that you used to. Which was a
Oh,
big
okay.
thing. People would come to the Buffalo side if they're from the U.S., come to the Buffalo side, walk across the footbridge, and then be there on the Canadian side. I would say there's more people that are staying on the Buffalo side than there used to be, but we'll
Mhm.
see now that things are opening up how that's going to work out.
Interesting. Okay. Question number two. This might have some overlap. What are you proudest of?
What am I proudest of? Probably my kids. They're doing really well. They're both college, soon to be college graduates, soon-ish. College is a lot less structured than I remember it being, but from either time. But no, they're two really successful people that are doing the things that they want to do out there in the world, and that's to me the most important thing.
That's amazing. Love that. Okay, number three. What is something that most people don't know about Buffalo?
Something most people don't know about Buffalo, that we have a beautiful and thriving tech and architecture scene. We're actually there's lots of things like lots of people think Buffalo snow, cold, bills, chicken wings. But I mean, other than the bar food, which is fantastic, and the massive number of breweries, which is also fantastic if you're into beer, we have like a vibrant music culture. Rick James was born here, and all of the members of his band were from Buffalo. The Goo Goo Dolls are from Buffalo. We're not as proud of that. Um, there's lots of great stuff that you can do. Buffalo is a cosmopolitan, massive city. We've got houses built by Frank Lloyd Wright. We've got architecture built by the same guy who designed Central Park, the whole Olmsted Park system. We have leftovers from the 1901 Pan American Exposition. Teddy Roosevelt was inaugurated in Buffalo, mostly because the last guy got shot at that same Pan American Exposition that I may have mentioned earlier. But like, there's so many beautiful and wonderful things in Buffalo that you should really come see it, give it a try, come for a weekend, check it out, go on the Mafia tour, go on the architecture tour. Check out the city hall. You'll be like, hey, that looks like mine, because Buffalo City Hall is the template, the mold for so many city halls across the U.S., especially throughout the Midwest. And it's just like a 1920s, 30s Art Deco thing. But beautiful city right on a lake. And a lot of people just think we get a lot of snow and we have a very bad football team.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I feel like that's accurate. That's the
It's
perception
it's
is
not it's not incorrect, but it's also not all that we have to offer.
right. And I mean, now I feel like I'm adding Buffalo to my gotta visit list.
Do it. Come on up. We'll go get wings.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, actually, number four is I felt like something that I thought we were going to get into and we didn't. So I'm glad I wrote it down. And it is, how does music make you better at your job?
Oh, okay. So there's a complicated answer. So being a programming, as we know, we kind of talked about this earlier, programming is math. Music is also math. I kind of have a brain that leans towards those things. I listen to music constantly. Like, it's even if I don't have music playing, it's in my head. The rhythm of it, the pattern of it is part of what informed me as a developer to say, like, okay, so this is how, in the same way that like any pop song is A B A B C A B. That's the way programming works. That's the way essentially building a website works. Like, oh, we need this part of the stack, this part of the stack, this part of the stack, this part of the stack. That's how we'll put it together. There's nothing that I've ever done throughout my life without doing it with music. That said, music is also like a common language that brings people together. I've been lucky enough in my career to travel all over the world. I've hit 5 continents, like 38 different countries, 40 of our 50 states. It's pretty great. And I'll walk in and I'll have a t-shirt on that says, like Sunday Real Estate, and someone in Berlin will be like, hey, oh my God, Sunday Real Estate, love that band. And it's like, cool. Like, now we have a connection based on something that happened in 1994. A band that came out and made 2 albums. Like, it's such a beautiful way to connect people. And you're able to kind of make reference to those things, in what you do. Music will bring you back to a space. It will help you do things. There's also, the Mozart effect, which doesn't require Mozart. I did a whole talk about this years ago. But it can actually build and give you cognitive boosts. So listen to music. Start with instrumental music. Listen to instrumental music while you're working. You'll see an improvement.
Yeah, interesting. And I feel similar about all of those things you said. The part that stood out was programming and music both being math, and that really resonates with me because I feel like I've been playing guitar for probably 15 years or so, and I'm not amazing, but I'm pretty decent, and I've played live and all that, and yet I constantly think, well, I can't, I still don't really have an ear for it. I don't have any confidence in really even being able to tune the guitar by ear. I'm always using some other device. It's like, well, how did I get good at this thing when I can't actually totally hear the nuance of what I'm doing? And I think it's because I always called it science. I'm like, well, I learned the science of this. I know where my finger needs to go and what sound that's going to produce. And it sort of works. And so I'm like, I took this non-artistic way to learn it and then turn it into an art. I don't know. It's really good.
Yeah.
That resonates.
But I mean, no, my youngest has a very good friend who plays piano, and he has never been to a rock concert in his life. And he has never really gone to see live music, but because he understood the math and the mechanics of playing the piano, he's a brilliant pianist, and he can sight read like you wouldn't believe, because that's essentially what it is. The idea of sight reading and playing music and, looking at Stack Overflow and understanding how to extrapolate something out of that and write your code. That's the same thing. We don't look at it the same way. And for me, it's very, like, when I code, I often code in a very, seemingly random, haphazard, kind of Wild West cowboy way, which nobody who codes with me appreciates. But that's also the way that I write and do music. Like I learned to play drums when I was 6 years old. I used to know how to read drum notation. I can still make it out, but I can't sight read anymore. What I play is by feel. I play guitar by ear. I play piano by ear. I play bass by ear. I just know what fits and where it's supposed to go. That comes from the fact that I've been doing this for 40 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, I know people that have been playing guitar for 20 years and 30 years, and they still can't get past the mechanical, and that's okay. You just keep making the effort. It's I guess people who like golf, which is not me. They talk about the fact no one ever gets good at golf. You just keep playing it. There's the same idea. There's a whole mechanical component there that I don't understand at all, that my body just won't do. But you can try to improve, and you look at it and you can stream and do your arms like this, and you can completely mimic the way that Tiger Woods or somebody plays golf, but you won't be playing golf like Tiger Woods. You can totally mimic how Jimi Hendrix plays guitar, but you're not going to be Jimi Hendrix. And it's not to say, I'm not trying to gatekeep and say there's things. It's just a matter of there's certain things that click, and there's certain ways that people play instruments or hear music in a different way that creates a common language, but not the same language. It's not monotonous. It's a different experience for everybody, but we can all enjoy it. That's the thing.
Yes. And that's the point. That's the point.
Exactly.
Okay, number 5. So you studied computer science in college, and talked about it a little bit, but many folks looking to break into the industry they're not going through the formal process. So what advice would you have for folks trying to break in but don't want to go to school?
Oh, this is going to be one of those DevRel it depends answers. If you can go to a boot camp, go to a boot camp. Do it. I know that that's not financially viable for everyone. Some boot camps, if you're looking into them, some of them do have financial assistance. Some of them are accredited as schools, so you can actually go there and get a financial assistance. They will help you find a job afterwards. Some are less creditable. Definitely look deeply into it before you go to a boot camp. If you cannot afford a boot camp, go online. There are lots of free resources online. There's lots you can take the basic programming in almost any language on lots of different platforms. Ruby, we were talking about Ruby earlier. Try Ruby is still a thing. Tryruby.org, I think it is. You can still go there, and it'll teach you the basics of Ruby. Are you going to be a programmer after that? No, you're not. But you will understand whether this is something you like, something you want to continue with, if it interests you. There's lots of books. Kind of find your way of learning. Figure out what that is and go after that. If you can do classroom, do classroom. If you can't do classroom, fine. If you have a little bit of money, go out and buy a book. Make sure it's recent. That's one thing that I know that some people that I work with in underrepresented communities, they go and get a book at the library, but that book is 10 years old. And learning PHP 4 probably isn't super that important right now.
Mhm.
So make sure that when you're looking at books, especially from libraries, make sure there's something that is more modern, more recent. If it's theory, that's fine. Most of the theories are still the same. If it's about a language specifically, then definitely make sure you get the updates. The other big key to getting involved is to actually do the thing, actually do the job. I mentioned this earlier. If you want to get into open source and you're interested in a project, go read the documentation and then fix it. You'll learn about source control. You'll learn about Git. You'll learn about the project itself. You will be able to grammatically fix this. I worked with Mattermost for a while. Their biggest number of contributors is people who translate, which is just adding words to a database so that you can use the application across different languages. There's 102 different languages that you can have Mattermost in, including right to left translations, because someone built that. Most of those people entered through helping write documentation. And that's a super, super easy entry point for people.
Oh, I was just having a conversation about that yesterday. Yeah, even writing docs writing, great way to break into open source.
Exactly. And then, I mean, it's a good way, because when what you realize is like, oh, I'm writing the documentation, but I'm also learning how this language works, or this project. I know how it goes, so now I can start contributing actual code to it.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, number 6. Describe your favorite hat.
Ooh, my favorite hat. My favorite hat would probably be a black derby with a red or like brownish red band with a little feather on the side. I don't have one. I've had it on my Christmas wish list for about 20 years. No one will buy me one because it would look really stupid if I got one. But it would look a little too, milady, and I don't really want to give off that vibe. But still, those hats are cool. Like, they look really cool. If I could get like a full like 3-piece suit with like a watch chain and everything, I would need to get that hat immediately.
Okay, that's a fair point. I also love that you answered with a hat that you don't have. That's very good.
It's the grail of hats.
I mean, you have to have something that you're aspiring to, right?
Exactly. I mean,
what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I have 27 variations on different baseball caps. For lack of a better term, I have some Peaky hats, kind of like the Peaky Blinders cabbie hats. I have for a wedding that I went to during the summer where I wore a what was it called? I don't know, one of those fancy like suits that you wear in Panama. I had a Panama hat. But when it really comes down to it, I want that brown derby. That's the way to go.
Fair. That's fair. Glad you know what you want. Number 7. What's the next concert you're going to attend?
The next concert I am going to attend, to my knowledge, I think if I have my dates correct, I'm going to see Wu-Tang and Nas in Cuyahoga Falls, in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
That's in September.
Oh yeah, that's that. Is that the name of the venue? I was trying to think. Oh,
yeah,
is it?
No, I think I don't know the name of the venue. I know that the tour is called the New York State of Mind Tour. But
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Blossom, right? Blossom Music Center.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That is a really great place to watch a show. I love that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm slightly afraid that it's going to be like, oh, cool, everybody got old, awesome, that's great. But I mean, you don't have these opportunities every day.
It's true. Great venue. Last time I went, the downside was everyone there. It may have changed, but at that time there was only one road out, and so people filtered in occasionally. But then it took like 2 hours to get out of the parking lot.
I feel like I used to be a big hockey fan here in Buffalo. I'm used to that. Our hockey arena is directly downtown in the center of downtown. So you think it would have, but like they built parking lots all around it and then a hotel. So it's like, oh, so we have 2 streets and one of them has a train running on it. Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good. And it's all part of the experience, right?
Yeah. It's that way your ears can come down and you can have a normal conversation in the car on the way home.
Perfect. Yes. Okay. Number 8. What is the single most important piece of advice that you would give someone who is trying to build a community today?
Single most important piece of advice. You need to go to the community. The community does not come to you. So while you're talking about building a community, that's great. You need to be a good citizen in a community, a good participant in a community. It doesn't matter what that community is. If it's a language, Ruby, Python, Go, Java, JavaScript, they all have communities that you should be a part of. Participate, learn from that. in that, you kind of build a sub community in that community around your product or project or thing that you're excited about. If you want to build a community, go and be a participant in the community that you want to see.
That. Number 9. Okay, I did this one last week and I liked it so much I felt like I would bring it over. It's elaborate. This is a 4-parter. Ready?
Okay, all right.
If you could, you can take anybody to lunch. It's got to be lunch. Person can be alive or not. Here we go. 1, who would it be? 2, where would you take them? 3, what would you order? And 4, what topic would you bring up first?
Okay. Wow. That I was not ready for this, Sean. I was not ready for this question at all.
This was a little too elaborate for this last section.
Who would I bring? You know what? I'd bring Prince.
All right.
I feel like that would be a super interesting lunch to have. Where would I take him? To the Terrace in Delaware Park, which is this great restaurant at the casino in Delaware Park here in Buffalo. It's across from the Albright Knox Art Museum, and it's above Delaware Lake, so it's beautiful views, and the food's really good. What will we order? Probably the Nashville-style fried chicken po' boy, which is a great sandwich. It's on baguette. It's actual fried chicken. It's not like, chicken tenders or something like that. It's literally a fried chicken breast with a great New Orleans-style remoulade. Delicious. What would I bring up first? What do you ask Prince? You have the opportunity.
That's the question.
Given the opportunity, how far would you have gone? How many more albums? How many more songs? How far would you push the industry?
It's a good topic. That could go a lot of ways, that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 10. If you can remember, you worked in, I think it was in college, you were a DJ for WBNY.
I was, yeah.
All right.
Wow, you really looked this stuff up.
I found this last night, and I was thinking, what song were you playing on repeat during those years?
Oh, wow. I would say that one of the songs I was playing on repeat probably was, because I was trying to get a new generation of people into some things that are a little bit older, would have been Circles by Sunday Real Estate, In Circles, along with any track off of Something to Write Home About by the Get Up Kids.
Okay.
I would probably also be slipping in. I know you wanted one answer, but I can't do that.
It's
slipping
right.
in anything off of You'd Prefer an Astronaut by Hum, but especially the song I Like Your Hair Long, and a little bit of this little known band called Kill Creek from Kill Creek, Kansas. They had an album called St. Valentine's Garage. It was probably one of the best examples of why emo became emo. Amazing guitar-driven rock with duplicated vocals, masters of the loud, soft, dynamic play. Just absolutely brilliant. They had a couple other albums after that, like many years after that, but Kill Creek, St. Valentine's Garage, I think it came out like 1993. And it's still now, I listen to it at least once a year to this day.
Wow. Okay. I feel like that's like the highest praise you can get as a musician 30 years later. Is like, you're still being listened to, and there's so much music at our disposal today.
Exactly. Streaming is great. I still buy albums and I still listen to them, but streaming is great because sometimes you're just like, hey, remember that one song? And you can find it.
Yep. Absolutely. Yes. 100%. Okay. Number 11, very last one. This is always my last one. It's my second favorite question behind what is the best sandwich. And it is, what is the worst mistake that you've made as a developer?
Oh, I can tell that one. So back in the days, that job that I was talking about where we were moving Visual Foxborough to Ruby, we had reached the point where one of our products was about to be released. The first Rails version of it, going live January 2, I wanted to say like 2008 or something like that. Crunch time, maybe skimming some things on the side, not doing great. Ran a command as we put it into production, like the second sub version of it. We put it into production, and I dropped the entire database.
No.
200,000 students and instructors.
Do you have a backup?
Disappeared. Sure didn't, because this is way pre-cloud. So yeah, what we did have a backup, but what we had to do is basically re-import everything from the original. Luckily, it had only been like 3 hours since we kicked out the original version, so there wasn't much lost. But oh my goodness, if you ever need a lesson to learn why you write tests for your code, this is it. Dropping an entire database because you wrote a query wrong will haunt you for the rest of your life.
Oh, so this wasn't like a one-time query you wrote. It was like something programmatic.
Yeah, this was an abstraction in Ruby to clean up. The idea was it's supposed to get rid of all of the pre-production data, like all the sandbox data that we had in there.
Yeah. Okay.
And it should not have made it to production because every 24 hours it would just kick off and drop the database and rebuild it so that we could start over with clean stuff again. And so, yeah, that wasn't so great. That was the scariest 3 hours. Like I'm sitting there coding. I'm like, I'm going to lose my fucking job. We're going to be poor. I'm going to be homeless. This is bad. This is bad. And my partner going like, how did we miss this? Oh my God, I can't believe we're going to be homeless. And we're sitting there just like terrified. But you know what? We've been best friends since then. So, you know, it does build relationships. You know, turmoil and trauma tends to stick people together.
100%. And I can relate to that feeling, just like cold sweats. Like, can I just Command Z the thing that I just did? No.
Is there an undo for Postgres?
Nope. It's the next day or more of my life fixing this, and a lot more than that, feeling bad about it.
Yeah. Luckily, we found out after the fact that not many people had started using it because it was still early January and most schools had not gotten back in session yet. So it kind of went unnoticed. But at the same time, like if even one person noticed, it would have been our jobs on the line.
Yeah. Well, that's I imagine you didn't do it again, right?
No, I definitely learned about making sure your code is clean before putting it in production.
Yes. It's good to learn lessons the hard way sometimes, I suppose.
Yeah, it's why I have such a huge respect for like CI, like continuous integration. Those are important tools. Make them part of your tool belt.
Definitely. And so I didn't really, this is off topic and then we'll wrap up, but I didn't really get into, no, what's the right way to say this? I forget which book I read to get into Ruby, but I think it might've been Mike Hartle's book. And I think that's the right name. And it was so driven or like test driven development, the whole thing. And I was like, I'm just trying to learn this language. I am not going to write tests. And that was really big in those days. Like, write tests before you write the code. And it slowed me down so much as a beginner that I despised writing tests for a few years
until I did situation.
Did a few stupid things. And now I feel like I came back, but not all the way. It's like, well, I'm not going to write them first, but I'm going to write them, and I'm not going to cover everything, but I'm going to cover the important things. And now I feel like I have this really great relationship with testing and CI.
Yeah, that's what I like to call shame-driven development. You write enough tests that when the next developer comes along, they're like, oh yeah, they wrote tests. We're good. We're fine.
Yes. Oh, shame-driven development. I love that one. Okay, well, PJ, thanks so much for being here. This was a really fun hour. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is a good time.
Absolutely. Now, before we go, why don't you can take a minute to tell both the listeners and the viewers how to get in touch with you if they want to chat, and feel free to give a quick plug to anything else that you're working on.
Sure. So, I mean, if you want to get a hold of me, I am on Twitter at Asplenic, ASPLEENIC, because I don't have a spleen. There's a whole story behind that, but we don't have time for it. You can always find out what I'm doing, devrelate.io, at devrelate.io on Twitter. I'm around. Feel free to reach out. I'll talk to anybody. I love chatting and hanging out with people, talking about technology. My big thing is always, technology from the anthropological perspective. Technology is tools that we build to make humans' lives easier. So let's focus on that a little bit more and less on the productization and the monetization of these things. Let's focus on what actually makes our lives easier. But yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat.
Wonderful. All right. And for those of you in the audience and listening in, we will be back live on May 19th with Eduardo from Netlify. And that's, again, it's 1 p.m. Eastern time in the United States, or 5 p.m. GMT. So from CFE.dev, thank you all for joining us for the show. Thank you, PJ, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much.